Hello guys and welcome back to yet another Doctor Who Series 10 episode review. As I say again, excuse my voice, I've still got a cold and it's really early in the morning. So without further ado, let's get into Series 10 episode 4. Knock knock. Who's there? Okay, so first of all, the episode opens and you've got Bill and her university friends and they're house hunting. And it shows kind of how hard it is for them to get a house and like the problems with house hunting, etc. Which I think it was quite comical, really. Like, I thought it was quite a funny montage, and then there's this sudden turn, and then they go. Then this guy turns up, and he's like, "They're looking for somewhere to live." And then we finally get to see the old house, which it's a really creepy old house, and I don't know what it was, but like the way they sort of had the camera on it and the way the angle was, it reminded me of Sarah Jane's house. I think it was just the way they had the angle of on the camera, like the camera angle was the same as how they used to sort of look at Sarah Jane's house in the Sarah Jane Adventures. And then they're inside. It's night, and there's that atmosphere outside with the storms and stuff, and the lightning, and it reminded me of Hyde with the 11th Doctor in a way. Like the fact that the atmosphere, it was probably the same sound effects, to be honest, in the same like way they did it. Because that's what they do. And then, like, the guy, the boy, the first boy that dies, we see him enter his bedroom, and just before he enters his bedroom, this is what I noticed: there is actually a hole in the wall. And then he goes into his bedroom, and I just thought that hole in the wall was kind of some way of foreshadowing that he's going to get eaten by the walls. But I don't know if they intended for that. And then you've got the fact that teen boy, that one of Bill's friends, Pavley or something like that, I forgot what it's called, is using a vinyl record. I just thought that was funny because vinyl records are actually quite big at the moment, and teens do use them. So they used pop culture in the episode, and they kind of related it all together. And I liked how they did that. Then, obviously, one thing I've always liked about a Doctor Who episode, especially a lot of Matt Smith's, what they used to do is you'd have a bit of a montage before the opening titles, and then the alien or the villain of the episode would take its first victim, and then it'd cut to the opening titles. And they did it in this episode. The first boy gets eaten by the wall, cut straight to titles. And Doctor Who, and they did it earlier on this series as well. That sort of thing. Then I like the fact that Bill cheats to get her boxes inside the TARDIS. Rather than having to carry them in, she makes the Doctor kind of land. I thought that was quite funny. The fact that she already knows you can do that is really fair, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then the Doctor mentioned they're having the conversation about Time Lords and like what they do, and then he mentions regeneration, and I thought that the fact he mentioned regeneration, and then she's asking what it is, but he's like, "Oh, you don't need to know yet. There's not there now." It was kind of a foreshadowing for his regeneration later in the series, which apparently is now going to be like no other Doctors. So I'm a bit puzzled as to how that's going to go down. So I just saw that the fact it was just like, oh, you don't need to know that. Time Lord's all you need to know for now. And obviously he's going to regenerate later on this series. So it was kind of like he's trying to delay the inevitable, but he knows it's coming because he knows what's behind the door. But we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Then the Doctor doesn't want to leave. He takes Bill to this old scary house where she's moving in, and he can sense something, and he sucks his finger and then sort of puts it in the air. And he used to do that in some other episodes, like in the past as well. But the 11th Doctor used to do that quite a lot. And he used to lick things as well. And the way he just used his finger, it reminded me of like the 11th Doctor when he did it. So, we're going to talk about a theory here that you guys can comment in the comment on in the comments. Once they're inside, Bill starts calling the Doctor her granddad. And then he's like, oh, at least call me father. She's like, well, he's my grandfather. And the way she felt so comfortable calling him it, like, to me, it feels like there's going to be a massive twist, and that the reason Bill seems to know so much about the TARDIS and, like, the reason she knows so much about the TARDIS and, like the butterfly effect and stuff is because she is Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, but regenerated. I'm not sure if it's possible, but I suppose it could be. Even though she's supposed to be fresh to it, it could work if she was Susan. But she's kind of hiding it from him and everyone. But we'll talk. But you guys can let me know what you think of that. But I just felt that, like, when she's calling the Doctor grandfather, that was an absolute call out to Susan. Absolutely, without a doubt, that was a call out for Susan calling the Doctor grandfather. And the fact that they're kind of going for this reboot, and obviously it's the first companion in the reboot kind of thing. It's like grandfather, like the first companion called the Doctor grandfather because it was his granddaughter. And obviously, I know Peter Capaldi really wants his granddaughter to be in it, so wants Susan to come back. So I thought it'd be really interesting if it turned out that Bill was actually his granddaughter. Anyway, moving on. Bill, like, when she's putting the picture on the wall, she hears the creak and she just knows. She, like, assumes that something's bad's going to happen, but she's trying to, like, no, it isn't happening. It's just my imagination. Come on, you can do this. Nothing bad's going to happen. There's no monsters, nothing, no big aliens, no big fish. Nothing like that at the moment. But she knows that something's obviously up. Especially since she knows that the Doctor's there. And then I thought it was funny. Now, I predicted this. I was sat watching it, and they're sat eating Chinese, and then they hear this cluttering, talking about noises, they hear this cluttering in the kitchen, like, that was in the kitchen. And I think Bill in that moment knows it's the Doctor, and that's why she's up for going for it. If not, then she's just up for going into action, just like a companion should be. But I was just thinking, like, you heard the banging, and I just thought, there's going to be a massive twist. They're building up suspense here, and it's going to end up being the Doctor. You could just tell how they were building up that suspense. They were building it up, they were building it up, they were building up, and then I was like, that's going to be the Doctor in that cupboard when they opened it. And then they opened it, and the Doctor's broken in. And then he's like, there's no central heating. Even though when they signed the tent agreement, they actually wanted, what's it called? They actually wanted central heating in an house. And then there's like, oh, is that the Doctor has like a funny moment? He's like, what's that smell? It's Chinese food. I love Chinese food. Which is, you know, we find something else about the Doctor and him liking Chinese food. I thought that was quite an interesting thing. that was a fun thing as well. Then we move down and we get to see a bit more of the Mystery Tower. And, like, we know that there's this tower. And no one knows why it's there and why they can't go in it, but the tower. It's absolutely off-bound. And there's no entrance to it. Well, there is, but we'll talk about that later. And so then the Doctor's like, and he asks him who's Prime Minister, because I think he realises in that moment that this man's not quite there. And he's like, who's Prime Minister? And one of the names he mentions, he says Wilson, Harrison, and Harriet Jones. And obviously, the Doctor Whoverse know who Harriet Jones is, because Harriet Jones has been in Doctor Who quite a few times. So I just thought it was like that little Easter egg there where they called her out was quite cool. I did like that. Then the Doctor gets Bill's phone and he uses his mind to play Little Mix on Spotify. And then you have that bit of pop culture kind of moment. And the Doctor's like, do I know who it is? Of course I know who it is. And it's like, oh, Bill likes Little Mix. And then they're like, no, we need to have a conversation. We need to talk about your taste in music. And then once everything starts kicking in, so Bill and her friend are off on their own talking to that boy. And he's flirting with her and she's like, you know, look, I know you're into me I know you're into me in that, but I tend to go for girls mostly. And he was like, oh. Which I thought was just funny, and I know it's quite funny. You like a girl, but then she turns out to be gay, which that could get you. But you're just like, oh, that'll explain why she wasn't interested. You just you don't feel rejected then. And then they're off on their own. The Doctor's with that Harry, who is actually the grandson of the fourth Doctor's companion, Harry Sylvian, Harry Sylvian, I think it is. And then the atmosphere kicks in and all the wood's creaking and there's knocking everywhere. And then Bill goes, let's go upstairs. So they used horror movie logic. Now, it's stupid because anyone in a horror movie, you don't run upstairs, you run straight out of the front door. But in the Scream franchise, they do all the cliche things, but they kind of knock them on the head. So if you run upstairs, you'll survive. If you go out of the front door, you're likely to die. Which I thought was really cool. And I liked how they were kind of using horror movie, they're using more slasher kind of cliches, but they did what Scream did, so that it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I just thought that was really cool. Then also one other thing they did was in Scream, when they're talking about the rules of horror movies, is never say "see you later," because that means you're gonna die. And then he's like, "Ooh, see you later," and then obviously he gets killed by the killer. And then actually, I don't think he gets killed by the killer. I think he is the killer. And I just thought it was funny that the boy that fancied Bill, forgot his name. He was just like, "Oh, I'll see you good night," and he's like, ooh, pulling himself in, just messing about. But the fact that he says "see you later" kind of thing, in other words, then I knew in that moment I was like, he's about to die, because that's horror movie logic. Then he dies. And then we have like you've got the girl that she feels claustrophobic. She's getting all the fears and all the claustrophobics coming in on her, and then she runs outside and she ends up getting eaten by a tree. I just thought it was cool that even the wood outside the house is now made of these creatures. And in that moment, I just thought, what if there isn't any like wood lice or anything like that? But what if it's like living wood, like living plastic, you know, like a new version of the Autons, but wood. But no, I was wrong. And then when they finally go into the first victim's room and they actually discover him, the way he's stuck in the wall, it reminded me of the Han Solo scene in Star Wars where he's stuck in carbon and he's kind of got his hands there and he's just sort of frozen in carbonate. I just thought, I don't know if that was like a little reference and supposed to be going for the style of Star Wars there or what, but I'm not sure. And then obviously the guy makes him like go into the wall, like the caretaker. And then then obviously Bill's running and stuff away from the caretaker, and they find a bookcase and they're pulling all the books. But the way Bill kind of leads, I really like. And then we go back to the doctor with Harry, and then he manages to get one of the aliens to come out of the wood, and he calls it. It looks like a wood lice alien, and then it's like, oh, it's called the Triads. And then we see a whole thing of him going. The doctor goes down his little elevator secret passage, so we get to see 2 secret passages inside the house. And then we kind of we move on, and then we start kind of. They're going down, and the doctor's just having a conversation. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call them lice, am I? I mean, you know. And then he's like, yeah, but they're aliens. And the fact that he's kind of questioning, he must know that like his grandfather used to travel with the doctor, kind of thing. I think, but I'm not sure. And then one thing I like is the fact that Bill's going off on her own with her friend. It kind of shows her independence without the doctor, and that she can be a good character without having the doctor there. And that's one thing I did like in this episode. I don't like the big twist that they find out that it's actually a 20-year thing. So every 20 years it takes 4 victims. But then when the caretaker comes and he actually kills Harry, well, I say kill him, he puts him into the wood. He makes him into the very fabric of the house. He doesn't seem that bothered, doesn't the doctor? Like, he just keeps questioning. And like, he's asking him questions about why he's doing it and what's going on, but he doesn't seem that bothered that the boy he was just with has just been like turned to wood. But I think secretly the doctor knows deep down he's gonna save all the people that have gone into the woods somehow. And then we find out that Eliza, the caretaker's daughter, as he says at first, is made of wood. She's staying alive because the kind of these triads, they made her into wood, and they get people, they make they kind of give her another soul, keep her alive. And then one thing I don't like is the fact that we know Bill's gay, right? I'm fine with it, but they highlight it by making her wear rainbow clothes. Like, okay, yeah, we get it. She's gay. The rainbow flag's a symbol of the LGBT community. She doesn't need to wear rainbow clothes every episode. But in most of the episodes, she's wearing something rainbow coloured. Okay, she could be Jessie Page on YouTube, be the mermaid mommy, but she's not. And I feel like they're highlighting the gayness in her by not showing it, but by just making her wear the symbol of the LGBT community, which is obviously the rainbow flag. And the fact that the Doctor then says, oh yeah, it's about high-pitched sounds. It's high-pitched sounds that kind of get them to come out of the wood. In that moment, I thought, please say this is not going to all be fixed by the Sonic. Then again, it doesn't work on wood. I didn't want it to be all fixed by the Sonic, because the fact he was on about this high-pitched sound, I was like, oh, he's always on about the Sonic having high-pitched sound. And then it turned out that he didn't stop it by the Sonic, so that was good. He only used the Sonic once in this episode, which I thought was quite interesting. And then the creature's like, you know, I have to go. And in fact, it turns out that the caretaker's not actually Eliza's father, he's her son. And that's how it all happened, because obviously her father was whereas the boy, he stayed to look after his mummy. And that was like, I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting twist, and he turned out to be her mum. She turned out to be his mum, which that was interesting, and I did like that. And the Doctor realised that. Then, obviously, the creature kind of hugs the son, and it's kind of like a suicide, but kind of like, it's our time to go type thing. And they are engulfed in this woodlight. So she saves everyone, which I thought was really good, that the Doctor didn't even have to defeat the creature. She did it herself. She realised it was the best thing to do, and finally to let go on the world. And then everyone's saved, and like the Doctor's happy about that, because obviously everyone's saved and no one died on this adventure, which is always good, because the Doctor doesn't like losing people. He's fed up of losing people. Then obviously then you realise that in this episode the tower was the MacGuffin. Now, if you don't know what MacGuffin is, it's kind of like something in a story where it's the thing that the characters are constantly after. Like, if you've seen Legends of Tomorrow, the MacGuffins, the Spear of Destiny. And in this episode, the MacGuffin was the tower. Everyone wanted to know what was in the tower, and they wanted to get to the tower, but there was no way into it. But then when they finally found a way into it, they discovered the truth. And I thought that something... Then we go to Nardole, and he's fiddling with the door, and he's got those things flipped out. So clearly the door's not that locked. And he says, like... He says, you see, I've told him he doesn't need to... He says to the Doctor, you see, you don't need to go off on off-world adventures. You got plenty of things here on Earth that want to kill you. And I felt like that was a reference to what was behind the door, which we will talk about at the end of this video. The door theories. Then the way the Doctor kind of talks about, like, then you hear a piano playing for Elise, and Nardole's like, you put a piano in there, and he's like, oh, yeah. And the way that just basically says the Doctor's already been in there, which means the door's not locked. He's guarding whatever's in there. Well, it is locked, but the Doctor has the key. So the Doctor's already been inside. And then the Doctor's like, I know you're a prisoner, but so am I. He's like, we're both prisoners. And it's like the Doctor cares about the person, in a way. I don't know. I got the vibe. The Doctor cares about what's ever behind the door. I mean, to even give them a piano as well. Isn't, yeah. And obviously, as I've already said, that Harry guy was actually Harry Sylvian's grandson, who was the fourth Doctor's companion. So, let's talk about the door before we talk about next week's episode. So, the big vault doors. the Doctor enters it at the end of the episode. There's this big white light on his face, something white behind is behind that door. But what is it, and who is it that's playing the piano? We need to know, which we do now know, which was confirmed by Stephen Moffat earlier this week, that we do find out in episode 5. I thought episode 5 was the one with the monks in, but it turns out it's not. Episode 5 is called Oxygen, and it's in space, but we'll talk about next week's episode later. So theories about who's behind the door. I have a feeling that the Doctor has someone behind the door. It's not a thing, it's a someone. And there's going to be a big twist that it could have been an old villain that he's trying to, that Gallifrey has, he's made an oath to his people to protect this creature that they have manipulated, they have made into a good person. And they're trying, like, a good villain, and they're trying to kind of help him. Now, that could be the Master, as in John Sims' version of the Master, and it could mean that the Doctor is the reason that Missy, that John Sims' Master regenerates into Missy. But I don't think they do it in this episode. I think we will find out in this episode, but it will definitely be at the end of episode 5, because you always like, it'll just be the kind of last shot. You'll see who's in there, and it'll be like, shoo, da, 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 and then it'll go straight to credits. Now, the only thing that's going to annoy me about that is I'm going to have to avoid all social media, because I don't watch it on a Saturday anymore when it's on, because I'm busy at that time. So I watch it afterwards, like at 11 o'clock. So I basically got to avoid social media till then, so that I don't find out who's behind the door before I've watched the episode, because I'm sure that we'll be buzzing to talk about it next week. Speaking of next week's episode, there are zombies on a spaceship. Yes, there is a space station that's... The way the Doctor was like, oh yeah, the people have died and stuff, it kind of reminded me of, like, hang on a minute. Like, it reminded me of, I think, is it 42 or something like that? It's like, well, where have all the people gone? Something like that, and then you find them, and like, the same with the episode of Series 8 with David Walliams, or whatever it was in, I can't remember what it was called, with that creature in, and there was, I forgot what the episode was called. It wasn't a very good episode, so I can't remember. But basically there are zombies walking around a spaceship next episode that are really badly CGI'd. That's what's coming next week. Next week's episode looks interesting. I don't think it'll be a good episode though. To be fair, so far, Knock Knock is my favourite episode without a doubt. I love this episode, and I don't think I would have changed the episode the slightest. I thought it was really good, and it's one of the best episodes of the series so far, and I cannot wait to find out who's behind the door next week. So that's it for this review, guys. Thanks for watching. If you've got any theories on Bill being Susan, or who you think's behind the door, judging by the end of tonight's episode, leave a like and comment down below what your theories are, and we will discuss them in next week's episode of my review. So yeah, I'll see you all later, guys. Goodbye for now. Goodbye.